2008 was a strange year for EA. The greedy, monolithic corporation we know today was helping put out some brand new IPs, in a year that was notable for its many sequels. Mirror's Edge introduced the world to a shining city and a zen-like mood which has persisted in people's minds to this day. Dead Space, released a month previously, did the opposite. Developed by EA Redwood, who would later become known as Visceral Games, Dead Space has as control engineer Isaac Clarke, as we go to solve a minor communications problem on board a mining ship. Naturally, we solve the problem easily and go back home, stopping at a Space McDonald's on the way back. Yeah, of course not.
Come in, Ishimura.
I'd never actually played through Dead Space until now, so wanting a spooky game for this Halloween season, I was excited to finally load up this game that people talk highly of years later. This was so bad, I could not even hear what this space version of the Demon Souls Maiden was telling me. So what's going on? The game's PC port is awful. VSync will lock the game to 30 FPS, so you'll want to turn that off. But then the game will run over 60 FPS, and that makes the physics go havoc. So you'll need to inject some VSync externally from your graphics driver. And while you're there, you might want to add some anti-aliasing, because the in-game version is just an ugly blur filter. Now the game runs properly, but you don't. Controlling the game with a mouse requires an external fix, because it's frankly broken. But that's fine, I wanted to lean back with a controller. But that's somehow also broken. The dead zones on the sticks are so big, you have to move it almost all the way for it to even register. Good job this isn't a game about precise aiming or anything. If you're on Steam, you can get controller profiles that will fix this. If you're not, you're going to need an external program. So now you've beaten the game's first boss, the checklist of things to do on the PC Gaming wiki page, you can now play the game. The game plays a lot like Resident Evil, but in space. This is also an accurate summary of the game's development. Originally it was meant to be a third System Shock game, but this ended up being scrapped when Resident Evil 4 was released, and it was love at first sight. Goodbye hacking minigames, hello over-the-shoulder shooting. The big gimmick of Dead Space is the dismemberment. You can take off the limbs of any of the necromorphs. These are called necromorphs, by the way. And they'll come after you however they can. You're encouraged to do this, as some of their new appendages are their weak points. No prizes for headshots here. It's actually something that makes the gunplay a bit more stand out in this game. It feels really, really, really fun to do this, and I can't think of any other game that does it as well. And there are a great many guns you can use to help overcome your foes, like a gun that launches enemies around, a flamethrower, and one that fires circular saws to accurately cut everyone in the room to pieces. And really, you need none of that shit. Because the best gun in the game is your starting pistol. Nothing is as reliable and accurate as this piece of engineering equipment, and given a few upgrades, you could rely on nothing but this beast. Nothing else compares, and the only reason I used the other weapons was out of pity for them. Oh, the game gave me some more saws, huh? I guess I can use them. Dust the cobwebs off this old thing. But wait, isn't this supposed to be a horror game? Is this game scary? No, not in the slightest. Which is not necessarily a problem. Resident Evil 4, for example, isn't scary. But its blazing action and funny quips more than makes up for that fact, so it doesn't need to be scary.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
The problem comes with Dead Space thinking that it is in fact scary, by putting in all of this work and effort into what it thinks will spook the player, and then it just falls completely flat. Now, the general atmosphere, Dead Space gets completely right. Simply walking around the ship, hearing the ambient noises of the engines and sinister whisperings, very good. Very spooky. problem comes with this atmosphere only really being a solid foundation in which rotten wooden planks have been placed on top of. Every enemy that you see in this game is introduced with them screaming at the top of their voice, and then every violin in the world suddenly screeches to emphasize, "This is a scary monster, you should be scared now!" Subtle, it sure ain't. And this happens all the way through the game. The atmospheric build-up and the way it handles the monsters entering the fray feel completely jarring and out of place, like they are from completely different games. But the most damning part about the horror is the fact that the game is incredibly easy and incredibly predictable. I've already mentioned the starting pistol being crazy overpowered, but I should also mention the sheer amount of ammo and health that the game gives me on normal difficulty. Resident Evil would balk at the supplies it gives me on normal difficulty. I don't feel oppressed, I feel like the oppressor. You might think it my own fault for not picking a harder difficulty, but this was seriously a breeze. The only times I think I died were moments where the game will one-hit kill you if you aren't aware of what's going on, by which time you'll probably succeed immediately on the second try with your newfound knowledge. And it's that easy difficulty that robs the game of its horror, because why would I be scared of these things that I know I can kill easily? 2 shots, dead, wait for tentacles, blam blam. I wonder where the weak point on this guy is. It's a shame, really. If only there was an example of a horror game where the threat was less tangible, less easily defeated, so you never truly felt safe. But I can't think of one off the top of my head. The game isn't balls out enough to be action, and not scary enough to be horror. It's this strange in-between that doesn't know what it wants to be. In taking so much inspiration from all over the place, it begins to lose confidence in its own identity. Now, we've come so far and we haven't even mentioned the story, which should tell you really how I feel about it. It's not only quite underwhelming, but it also just feels as confused as the rest of the game. None of your superiors can decide if they want to leave the ship or explore its many mysteries, and so it ends up feeling like you're bumbling around without much clear purpose beyond the current threat. Oh, there are asteroids, go clear them up. Whoops, the engines aren't working, guess you're gonna spend a whole chapter going over there. We are an engineer, and it is interesting that we are solving problems to do with engineering. Most of the time. But given how areas will repeat and the lack of clear direction, it does make the whole experience feel bloated and padded. And the most confused part of the story is with dear old Isaac here. The love of Isaac's life is on board the ship, and the game keeps teasing Isaac with glimpses of her, as if to set up and develop the pair of them and their relationship. One problem: Isaac is a silent protagonist. The dude never says a word beyond... So why the hell would I care about this man's history and relationship? Gordon Freeman was a man of the here and now. We didn't set up his family going through Half-Life because that man was always moving forward and killing the next alien menace.
Hello.
So why are we trying to do it here?
How many times you watched that thing?
And it gets stupider, but that's spoilers. So please, skip to this timecode if you don't want a 12-year-old game ruined for you. Everyone all set? Here we go! After putting the necromorph magnet back where it belongs, we are betrayed by our cohort. They want to bring the deadly alien magnet off-world for their fruity little club. But that's not what's important, because she reveals that the wifey I've been chasing the whole time, this whole game, has been dead. And I'm actually insane. Look at the emotions our voiceless protagonist is going through. Actually, you know what? It's probably a good thing that Isaac didn't have a voice, because wifey is clearly fucking nuts.
Back now, Isaac. You can pilot the shuttle remotely from here. Make us whole again. Make us whole again.
And someone with a voice would say, "Hey, you're clearly evil, and I probably shouldn't listen to you." But you meant to, and the fact that Isaac follows his wife's orders without a word of suspicion or even a complaint infers that she always acts like this.
You're doing the right thing, Isaac. We're together now. The way it always should have been. I knew you'd come back for me. Nothing could stop us now.
Yes, honey. While we're in spoilers, I want to touch on the game's ending, which I think exemplifies everything wrong with the game. After having a big ol' boss fight, Isaac finally escapes this nightmare, taking off his helmet and relaxing his big lumpy Xbox 360 face, when suddenly... How goddamn cheap. And cowardly. It just emphasizes the lack of confidence the game has. Like, wouldn't it have been scarier if Wifey was just there, just sitting there, and she asks Isaac, "What's wrong, dear? Is something the matter?" That would have been creepy. There's nothing in the game with her acting like she just came out of the Grave Encounters movies, so why do it suddenly? Is it because of other horror films having a big sudden jump scare ending? I don't think you want to copy all of those. Do your own thing, Dead Space. I mean, I say that as if the franchise isn't already dead. So in conclusion, should you play Dead Space in 2020, or whenever you're watching this video? Well, despite its lack of clear direction, the game does occasionally do things that sticks out, with occasionally cool ideas and imagery that bring out the horror. And the gunplay, as I said, is quite satisfying, especially with the dismemberment being pretty much unrivaled even today. Neither are all the way there, but there's much worse ways you can spend your time. The game wanted me to replay on a New Game Plus mode, and the whole thing does remind me of a Resident Evil game, where you're rewarded for playing it several times. So if that's your sort of thing, maybe check it out. It's Halloween, you can be doing a lot worse than Dead Space. Although I'm 12 years late to this party and you've probably already played it by now. Ah well, see you next time.